Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Monday, September 8th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you on this episode. Lots of baseball news you should know coming out of the weekend, a round of injury updates, including Tyler Glasnow's ongoing battle with tall guy back. We are working frantically with our friend
Paul
Trevor
Sporer
May
back.
and Paul Sporer to learn more about tall guy back, because I don't think you and I quite qualify. We just have regular sore backs. But for the extra tall folks out there, we got to know, like, why is your back even worse than everyone else's? Lots of ground to cover, though. We've got some mailbag questions about how to manage your roster during crunch time. One that was a prompt with a question mark that just said Soto NL MVP question mark. So we'll explore that, and we'll take a brief look at where the money went for those still scrambling to upgrade their rosters over the weekend. Eno, how was the first weekend in September for you? Pumpkin spice season is upon us. Did you celebrate?
I did frantically look through all the local tap lists for fresh hop beers, but I was a week earlier, so next week that'll be a thing that I look for again. We did end up at the Bear Bottle Menlo Park outpost that they just opened. That was fun. I drafted a Little League team. It's the weirdest thing is, in order to make, fair teams, we had to scout the kids, rank them. And we're talking about like 11-year-olds. We had to scout them and rank them and then pick them in like a fantasy football type draft, fantasy type draft where we had a snake draft and we had picks. And I thought the whole thing made me feel a little dirty, except it is a good way to make teams kind of fair. Because, if you just have one person decide who's on all the teams, then it's just their own, and they could be like too susceptible to be like, well, this person said they wanted this person for carpool reasons. And then, which we did have to work out. Like that was definitely on the table. Like, oh, can we just take this person for carpool reasons right now? But, it's susceptible to making too many decisions like that and then ending up with unbalanced teams. And unbalanced teams are, a source of a lot of agita, when it comes to the Little League.
So carpool considerations would be makeup in Little League, basically. Like you want a good close knit, like everyone pulls their weight, everyone has the vehicle at the right time.
becomes a thing too. Like you kind of actually, when there are like makeup concerns, you kind of want to put that out on the table so that everybody knows, because there is like a mix of like the manager's personality and the player's personality. And this is actually something that came up in my an article on makeup, which I someday will publish it, that some of the process of scouting makeup is not so much will we or won't we draft them. It's where do we put them once they land stateside or once we draft them. What manager do we put them with? And can I alert the manager to be like, hey, this guy mouths off a little bit, give him a little bit of leeway and he's going to be fine. You know what I mean? Like, or, just know that this is coming, So, there was some of that too, where we were like, hey, if you're drafting this kid, like this is some of the stuff that happened last year, just so you know.
So, yeah, a little scouting report there. Sounds intense, but does sound like the right way to build a more like fair and balanced sort of league, as opposed to the one very detail-oriented parent just deciding to go rogue and like load up a team and then
that too
make everything else a little bit of a mess.
What if one of the people that the person that's doing it actually has a team and he just makes his team really good? You're like, okay, thanks.
I'm sure that's happened. I bet there's people listening that go, yep, I've been a part of a situation like that where some of the parents got involved and decided to make some pretty imbalanced teams. Probably not the best experience for everyone. Well, good luck with the fresh hop beers next week. And I saw that Bear Bottle opened that Menlo Park location. And I said, just like 2 years too late, but I'm sure I'll get back there someday. Let's get to some baseball news. You should know Trea Turner having an MRI on Monday, maybe already had it. We don't have the results of that. That's the result of a hamstring strain that was suffered in the 7th inning of Sunday's loss to the Marlins. I was not that surprised opening up the Trea Turner StatCast page for the first time in a while to see that he still has 100th percentile sprint speed at age 32. He's also got 16 outs above average, so playing great defense at shortstop this year. He's going to have a shot at 40 steals prior to this injury. I would guess, even if he's like in the day-to-day camp and not going on the IL, that might be a little bit of a stretch now with just 3 weeks to go here in the rest of the regular season. But I think the thing that's surprising me about Trea Turner, is that he's probably aging a little better than I would have expected so far. What we're seeing, I think, these last 2 seasons now are the nagging injuries. It was a left hamstring strain that cost him 6 weeks last season, and that's what's being looked at with the MRIs. So if he can avoid these soft tissue problems that are starting to become a little more of an issue for him, I think we're going to get a few more really nice, productive, well-balanced seasons from Turner.
It is strange. He is not that high volume of a player. He's made 150 games 3 times in his career. So there have been these issues, and I bet you that is how he ages. It'd be just more of this. So it's both a blessing and a curse. It's both a good sign and a bad sign. The good sign is when he's out there, he's going to be playing well. That's what it seems like we're seeing, and the athletic tools that he's got will help him, age well and gracefully. But at the same time, having so much wrapped up in your legs and having a history of some leg issues, that's how I think you start to see the sloughage, the aging will come in games missed more than like bad production when he's on the field. So I guess that just means that, if you're a rich team, you just have to have a pretty good backup, right? You may have to even spend money to have a pretty good backup as he ages. There's 8 years left on his deal.
I was gonna say, that's the only part of it you look at. It's sort of like the supersized version of the Bogarts contract, but you're also starting with a much safer and better set of skills. Yeah. But you're going to get to a point somewhere in that deal where you're like, all right, the legs are not what they used to be. And and he will become a second baseman eventually, but it still looks pretty good, at least in the early half of that deal. And I think question...
He's pretty close to a 7-win season at 32. So like the numbers suggest that this is a good deal and it's not underwater, especially since I think there's a little bit was stretched to keep the AAV down.
Yep.
So, it's only a $27 million AAV. So, if the last 2 years suck and they just like cut him and swallow $50 million, that's $50 million that they would have been happy sprinkling over an 8-year contract, except that this helped them build teams that weren't, didn't have as many luxury tax ramifications.
Exactly. So it's really not a problem based on how it started. The question I have for you, though, as far as Turner's approach at the plate goes, he's cut the chase down a little bit compared to the last 3 seasons. So maybe slowing the swing and miss rise potential by doing that, keeping the K rate under 20%. Again, he's done that pretty much every year of his career, except for the first year in Philly. Not a surprise. We see guys sign these big deals sometimes, press a little bit. He's already kind of gone back to his pre-year 1 in Philly K rate levels and maintained that. We've seen the barrel rate fall each of the last 2 seasons. Hard hit rate's still good, but the barrel rate's down as the ground ball rate has gone up. And I just wonder how much of that is Turner being a certain type of hitter now in his early 30s, but as he ages, as he maybe loses a bit of speed, do you think he has the barrel control, the ability to adjust his swing to actually loft it a bit more often and perhaps hold on to more power than expected? I mean, given the quality of contact he makes, I think the possibilities there. I just don't know if the swing actually is tailored to do that in the long run.
Yeah, it's got like a line drive swing more than a power swing. 48% ground balls. I like that the bat speed is okay and the max EVs are still pretty good. I wonder. I think it's a pretty sustainable approach. I wouldn't counsel him to do anything different. Would you? like, let's say the chase turns into more Ks and now he's, 22, 23% K rate, and he's 34 or 35 years old. I think you'd still want him to be maximizing his BABIP because of his legs. You'd still want him to be hitting line drives. You wouldn't want him to add even more Ks on top of that while trying to lift the ball more, right? I think this is just a really good approach that's going to be batting average driven OBP, but like it's still a good, solid approach, and I wouldn't tell him to do any different, I don't think.
Yeah, I think I'd tell him to stay the course with this as well. But if there's any little toggle, we have seen in a couple of years the ground ball rate come down just a little bit. If he could find a way to whittle away at that,
those are the years he hit 26 and 28 homers.
Yeah, that's where that extra little bit of value could come from. We'll see what the MRI turns up if we get results during the show or perhaps for our Tuesday episode. Lots of injuries around the league, though. Bobby Witt Jr. slowed by some back spasms. Good news here, no structural issues revealed by the further test that he underwent, so you can put him in the day-to-day bucket for now. Just a little bit tough if you're in a weekly league. Got to make a decision early in the week on whether or not he's actually in, but it sounds like there's a better chance than not that we're going to see a lot of Bobby Witt Jr.
I'm throwing him in there. You lose one game of Bobby Witt or have JP Crawford in there. I'd rather have 5 or 6 games of Bobby Witt than 6 or 7 games of JP Crawford, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's the type of fallback a lot of people are looking at, so that's probably why you would stay the course.
Like literally, JP Crawford is like my utility guy in most of my drafting holes.
The other Royals news, Cole Ragans made his first rehab start. 45 pitches at AAA Omaha on Sunday, 34 strikes, 7 Ks in 3 innings, allowed 1 earned run, only walked 1, a couple of hits, so all good. Touched 97 as well. Probably going to need another turn, maybe 2 before he comes back. But I think given that every single game matters right now, the Royals are in the dreaded glob trying to push their way into the postseason in the AL. The last wild card still within reach. They're 2 back of the Mariners right now. I could actually see them pushing Ragans back a little sooner and saying, hey, we'll just bullpen it the rest of the way. Because
3 or 4.
Yeah, 4 from you is better than anything else we could throw out there.
I mean, right now, their best, healthiest pitcher is Michael Wacha.
That would be a good reason to say, your 60 pitches next time out should come with us. If they want to do it that way, if they feel he needs one more turn, then they'll do that. But he's getting close, and if you see him on the wire, I would add him now because anyone that sees this note is going to want to try and get whatever they can get from him down the stretch.
I mean, when you look at the wins and loss columns, as you can on YouTube right now, it's just basically a grab of the Fangraphs wild card with the strength of schedule, the projected wins and loss, and their percentage likelihood of making the playoffs, the playoff odds piece on Fangraphs. But I think this is just interesting because, when you look at the wins and loss columns and the games back column, you can make the case that this is an exciting race. We've got the Rangers 1.5 back, the Royals 2 games back, the Guardians 2.5 back, the Rays 4 back. That's pretty good. And speaking to more casual fans, like in Little League or in my family, they've said things like, "Oh, the Giants are back in the race," because they look at things like that. And I am not disparaging any type of fanhood. That is actually more exciting than maybe in my type of fanhood, where I'm like, but the Mariners have a projected 57% win percentage the rest of the way, and their strength of schedule is the easiest other than the Guardians with the 490% win percentage of their opponents. And that's why they have an 80% likelihood of making the playoffs. It's more exciting to say, hey, look at all these teams that are 2 games back. And frankly, that might be just as right. Any one of those teams could catch fire, and we know that the Mariners are capable of playing like dog poop for a week or 2 weeks at a time. And so maybe the numbers don't really capture that maybe the games back and wins and losses actually do capture that this is an exciting race. Maybe I'm just being Mr. Poo-Poo Head.
Yeah, I don't know if you're being Mr. Poo-Poo Head, but I do think there are 2 distinct lanes to drive in, and the one you're driving in is it's the one that I spend most of my life in. I think it's
But
weird.
It's not as fun sometimes.
I think as humans, I think we're opposites. But I think in this playoff race, I'm more like the people in your life that are like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, I get it. I understand the math. I understand the why it projects that way. I understand why the Mariners are better on paper. We talked a lot about that on Friday. But I keep looking at it and saying, I don't understand it. But these other teams aren't going away.
There's a chance there. Yeah.
There's a chance there. I don't want to write off that possibility. It's a much more fun way to live your baseball life. And I dismissed it when Britt brought up the Giants on Friday. I was like, I really don't believe in them yet. And it would be an amazing twist if they somehow did play their way back into it. And it's part of it is also just like in the NL, the Dodgers are just not quite the team we expected them to be on paper going into the year. And part of that I think I always want to go back to is it does not matter how good you actually are in the regular season as long as you are good enough to get into the playoffs. That's the simple reality of how playoff baseball works. You just have to get there. You could make your life more difficult by not having to buy, by going on the road.
But you just imagine the Reds in a playoff series putting Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, out there in the games 1 and 2. Like, ooh, all of a sudden you're like, that's pretty good. Like, what if Green goes out there and shoves and strikes out 14 and pitches 8 innings? You know what I mean? Like,
basically, totally if he just does what he did on Sunday against the Mets in the Brandon Sproat debut, like that's any particular day, Hunter Green can do that, and that's a problem for any team in any matchup in the playoffs.
But the little the little game that I played with the American League is even more ridiculous when you do it in the National League. But also the games back column, the wins and losses games back column is more ridiculous. So like there's nobody within 4 games of the Mets, for the NL wild card. And the Mets have a projected 576 rest of season, and they have the second easiest schedule to the Padres, right? So, whatever I said about the American League situation is just even more, true about the National League, where none of the people who are not in the playoffs, who are chasing people who are in the playoffs, have a 500 projection for their team the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I think what it really takes is sweeps, right? Like you need to go into a series
against one person ahead of you. Yeah.
Just take 3 against someone that's in that cluster or someone that's ahead of you. That gets you the actual traction you need to move up and close that gap a little bit. And we're not getting a lot of sweeps in these really highly anticipated series. That's been a problem down the stretch for teams that are trying to make up ground. They just can't quite do it. In the NL, 4 games back on September 8th, you're still alive. I think it's cool that people still care. If you're a Giants fan and you're not just so mad that you're ignoring it and like thinking about the 49ers and doing other stuff with the beautiful weather, like, hey, that's great. I think that's good for the game that some of these teams are still hanging on. Even in
they're
the
playing
NL West,
really
though.
well. They've got 11 wins out of the last 14. Devers is hitting, like they're actually scoring runs, and they had like a consecutive game streak with home runs that they'd never done before. The Giants did. So be positive, be happy about it. It is a little weird that they sold at the deadline and are a fairly flawed team when you really think about it, but hey, flawed teams, like you said, just get in.
Just get in. You never know what'll happen. I don't think they will get in, but I think it's at least fun to see if something unexpected happens. Enough to tune in for if you're a fan of those teams. Padres are only 1 back of the Dodgers in the West, though. Right? The Dodgers right now, their Fangraphs win projection is 90.4. If I had told you it was going to be a 90.4 win projection for the Dodgers when we got to the first full week of September, I don't think you would have believed that back in March, right? It would have seemed impossible. And it's been a variety of different things. A lot of injuries for this team. It was the way they were built. High risk, high reward. Knowing that if you weather the storm of the regular season and 80+% of that roster is healthy in October, it's as good as any other team out there, regardless of what the numbers say for the first 6 months. I think that's, at least in some rounded down dummy version, what they think about roster construction. Like, hey, we got all these resources. Let's build a great team. If it's just good or very good for most of the year, it doesn't matter. As long as it's great at the end of the year, that's going to be what makes the difference. Now, Tyler Glasnow, as mentioned earlier, scratched on Friday with back tightness. He's called it tall guy back in the past. He should go in their series to begin the week against the Rockies. So we'll see if that actually holds up. And something that's happened as this group of pitchers has gotten healthier that's been maybe a little under the radar if you're not a Dodgers fan or if you don't have him on your fantasy team, Clayton Kershaw has been rolling since the start of August. Raise your hand if you cut Clayton Kershaw at the end of July in some leagues. Yeah, I'm raising my hand right now. Put your hand back on the steering wheel if you're driving.
They also have the classic thing where like when one thing is coming online and doing well, the other thing is broken. So they've gotten Blake Snell and Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto back, and Kershaw's dealing, and Glasnow has been pitching, and they've scored. They won the last game against Baltimore, but before that, they'd scored 3-1, 3, and 0 in the 4 games before that. So strange things were like, oh, their offense has always been a strength of theirs, and where did it go? Just in time for the pitching to get back, and just comical stuff. I mean, I'm sorry, it's comical. It's not comical if you're a Dodgers fan, but what happened on Saturday night, was comical. It's just absolutely disastrous to have a 3-0 lead. Yamamoto is pitching for a no-hitter, going into the bottom of the 9th with 2 outs, losing the no-hitter on a home run to Jackson Holliday, and then losing the game with Blake Trinan out there. So I think that their bullpen is still a problem. Kopech, is a wild card in so many ways because he's just, I would make him the closer if I was sure that he could command the ball. He has the kind of stuff that I want in my closer role. And Tanner Scott is having trouble commanding the ball. This is the type of thing that could still come online in the next 3 weeks. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, Kopech and Scott and Vesia, and they're fine, But and Dreyer has, come through and been pretty good. And Kasperius has been better as a reliever. So you could actually be fine as a bullpen in the playoffs. It doesn't look fine now. Trinan does not look right. And so I could see being a Dodgers fan and just being like, this sucks. This team sucks.
It's not what you were promised throughout the winter, right? And coming off of a World Series win, especially, your expectations are as high as they've ever been. And for good reason. This is a really good team that should be
for the record,
consistently
really
contending for World Series given their resources and given the way they're run, right? There's no argument against that. But the way Yamamoto lost the no-hitter, he was 2 strikes away from a no-hitter. He would have become the 3rd Japanese-born pitcher to throw a no-hitter in the big leagues. And it would have been the 3rd one against the Orioles. How weird is that? The Hideo Nomo and the Hisashi Iwakuma no-hitters.
I think the Padres have been no-hit the most and didn't have a no-hitter until Joe Musgrove did it.
Yeah. It's just one of those weird, quirky things. And I don't know, man. I would still, even with their bullpen flaws, fear the Dodgers in the postseason, or just be nervous about a matchup with them if I'm any other team in the field, because the starting pitching is still that good. This doesn't appear to be a major problem for Glasnow. Yamamoto looks great. Snell's healthy. Shohei, I know it was 3 2/3 because he had a illness last week. Came back, started Friday. It wasn't anything close to his best start, but he's still tracking toward being closer to a normal starter in the postseason than he's been for most of this year. There's still a lot of firepower taking the ball for the first 5 or 6 innings before they turn it over to the rickety wagon wheel bullpen.
Yeah, and that rickety wagon wheel bullpen in the playoffs is going to get better when you put Emmett Sheehan in it, and when you maybe put Clayton Kershaw or whoever it is that you move into the bullpen out of that rotation. That gets you a lot better, So they're probably going to be fine. There's an interesting situation here where they have 6 games left against the Giants in particular. They have no games against the Padres, so there's they're not going to hash it out anymore between those 2 teams. But the Giants could play spoiler here, Now, if the Giants play really well and take like 4 or 5 out of 6 from the Dodgers, that could put the Padres, into the division win. But I don't know that it helps the Giants that much with the playoffs, because then the Padres and Dodgers just switch spots. You know what I mean?
I think the Giants, this is where could the Giants make the playoffs? Yeah, it's like a 3% chance of happening. They have 3 at home against Arizona before they host the Dodgers for the weekend series. Then they go down to Arizona for 3 next week and go to LA for 4. So they only play the Diamondbacks and Dodgers for the next 2 weeks. Which is just, I mean, hey, like you want the chance to kind of push away the other team that's kind of hanging around, or one of the other teams hanging around in that 4 games back range in the wild card mode, so you could take care of one and then chase down the other. It's as much as you could ask for. If you've had the type of season the Giants have had, at least you got a shot to sort of control your own destiny.
And if the next 2 weeks go well for the Giants, then we are going to see a different number for the playoff odds for the Giants, because they also end with St. Louis and Colorado, which is easier than the Padres or the Dodgers.
Even though the Cardinals are hanging there with the Giants right now, they're like they're more similar than they are different.
But at least it's
hard
home
to believe
for the Giants,
Yeah,
against the Cardinals and the Rockies. So I don't know. I tend to think that there's a very small chance, but there's those 2 series against the Dodgers that make all the difference.
And maybe the thing that you would say, if the Dodgers were to fall out of the NL West lead, if they were to make the playoffs and not win the division, then they've made their path more difficult, and the wear and tear that will put on their bullpen, even when you stack in some of the guys who are starting right now, maybe that puts more pressure on them and makes them more vulnerable throughout October. I could certainly entertain an argument like that. Since we're on bullpens, we had a Daniel Palencia injury, blown save, and shoulder tightness. Not exactly what you want from your closer. The question I have for you is, regardless of Palencia's role, we kind of have the version with him in it, version without it. We don't really know if this is going to be a major problem or just kind of a day-to-day thing. What do you think of the Cubs bullpen now? I think it was improved at the beginning of the season, had some flaws. Obviously, the Ryan Presley addition did not work out at all. But as the season has unfolded, as they've made moves at the deadline, adding Andrew Kittredge, different things they've tried to do to just bolster what was a pretty big weakness for them, especially like a year and 2 years ago. Where do they fall right now as playoff bullpens go?
Yeah, I mean, I think among all teams, it's an above average bullpen, but I think among playoff teams, I would probably put it at below average. I like Brad Keller. I think that he's taken a real step forward. That's really interesting this year. And this Brad Keller versus the Brad Keller that was trying to start in Kansas City, that couldn't be more different. But it also proves the adage that any pitcher that has almost been a starter or been a starter at all, could be a pretty good reliever. And so, Keller's had made that transition pretty well. And then Kittredge is decent, but Kittredge has about average velo for a righty. Keller's a little bit above average. Palencia is the only one with plus velo of the 3. And I think it's kind of those 3 that I trust. I know Thielbar and Pomerantz are pretty interesting as lefties, so maybe I'm discounting them. Maybe I should give them more sort of matchup ability that some teams don't have. For example, the Reds bullpen is almost entirely righties, along with Brent Suter, who's sits 89 and is basically a long reliever. So in some ways, maybe the Cubs bullpen is built to match up well and play above their stuff numbers or whatever it is. But I'd still, I can think of 3, 4, 5 teams at least that I'd put ahead of them when it comes to bullpens.
Yeah, I think at least the A bullpen there is good enough. But that's not going to be the problem. I think where the Cubs could be in some trouble in a playoff series is if their starters aren't getting deep enough into games and that unit gets overtaxed. You get to the underbelly, I think they're a little more susceptible than some of the bullpens out there.
More Rogers, more Ben Brown. That probably will be a little bit of a rough time for them.
I mean, There's been times where we've liked Ben Brown and Porter Hodge, and Ben Brown as a reliever versus Ben Brown as a starter. I liked Ben Brown a little bit as a starter, so I like him quite a bit as a reliever. I think that could actually work. I think, Matthew Boyd, after a great first half, hasn't been quite the same guy. We've talked about Jamison Taillon, low strikeout rate. That's been the case throughout the second half as well. There's a lot of pressure, I think, on Cade Horton right now as a starter for this team. Like, there's so many things that could go right and make the Cubs exciting, and there's a few things that could be major problems for them too.
Think about them in a 5-game series. They're going to lose one of the first 2 games. Even no matter what you like of Shota and Matt Boyd, I think they're going to lose one of those 2 games. Right? So,
are you sure Horton's not start one of those first 2 games? Like, you wouldn't go Shota and
maybe. Horton? They'll lose one of the other 2 games for the first 3 starters.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, people do all sorts of things. They put the rookie third just because he's the rookie, whatever.
Or they get one him guy at home versus the road.
They want the guy at home. Yeah. They want a guy not at home. They probably want the 2 lefties at home. So I would say if they're home for that series, then they would actually go Imanaga and then Boyd, because the lefties in Wrigley, righty power is suppressed in Wrigley. So I think it might end up that way. But in any case, I think that they have the kind of situation that the Padres have had in the past, where they have like 3 or 4 good starters, but they may not have the advantage in games 1 and 2. So yeah, I think Horton is really important.
Yeah, he's pitching really well right now. So good signs for the Cubs to get
what is the matchup right now for them if they make it through Padres.
It's tough. That's a fun series right away.
Playoff bracket right now would be.
No, they'd get the
Cubs versus Padres.
Yeah, they get the Padres.
Yeah. So, actually, I would probably give the Padres maybe the advantage in game 2. It's King or Pivetta against Boyd, right?
Yeah, I'd probably take either one of those guys over Boyd. Like, not by miles, but I do think that's where the edge would be.
Yeah, and so I would say that it's, maybe it could be 1-1 going into that game 3 with Cade Horton against, I don't know, Cease. that would be a good game. I like that. Is that going to come true? That'd be a fun that'd be interesting if all that comes true.
Hey, I'm happy to watch that series. I think that could be a great wild card matchup between the Cubs and Padres.
I think so, yeah.
Hopefully that one holds up. Hopefully Daniel Palencia ends up being okay, though. Putting together a nice year as that closer. 22 saves now on the season, 3 ERA, 118 whip. Easily the best ratios of his career, 28% K rate as well. Plenty of swing and miss as like the leader of the A unit for the Cubs relief corps. Some other baseball news you should know. We saw Byron Buxton hit his 30th homer and later in the game get hit by a pitch in the knee. Looked like it hurt a lot. I mean, getting hit by a pitch looks like it usually hurts. That one looked worse than average. We'll see what they are able to do with him. It's a knee contusion for now for Buxton. But you were doing
I put together
digging.
This little chart. Yeah, I just thought this was funny. Byron Buxton over the last 5 seasons has been like worth around at least, I would say $10 per season almost every year. 2023 was the only year that he was not worth, he was below replacement in a 15-team league. And so I was like, is this consistency? This is like, I'd almost bet on him being a $10 player next year.
Well,
and I don't know.
It's $10 player in most years. That's under 400 plate appearances. This year he's been, especially by the track record of like bad luck, recurring stuff, everything that swirls around him. He was on pace to go over 500 plate appearances this season with relative ease, as long as this knee contusion doesn't turn into a lengthy absence.
And I actually don't think that his price will inflate a lot. I think people will just be like, well, that was his one good year and I'm not paying for it again, right? Mm-hmm. But just to give you context of what a $10 player in fantasy is, it's basically a top 100 bat. So you're talking about somebody that you would take in the first, in around the 9th or 10th round of a 15-team league. I'm suggesting that if he's still available in the 9th next year, you should take him. Now, if he gets a lot of inflation and people are buying the $30 version of him that he's been this year, that's going to be probably a problem for me. But I kind of don't think anybody's going to do that, because everybody has a brain and everyone can remember all the other years,
Yeah. So this is the 6th consecutive season with a double-digit barrel rate for Byron Buxton. He's 21 for 21 on the base paths. Byron Buxton's been caught stealing base on the base pass twice in the last 4 years. That's remarkable.
Yeah. So I think there are some settings where he's problematic to have, settings where you don't have an IL and stuff like that. I understand that. But there's a lot of settings where he might be undervalued. So I'm fascinated to see how much inflation he gets off this, especially like what if he just misses the rest of the season now with this knee contusion? People will be like, see, told you.
Another fun way to live your life, to be the C told you guy. Guys get hurt on injuries. We know there's an injury history there. You don't have to point it out and be like, hey, I was right.
But this was like what people have been, buying Byron Buxton every year for this year. So he finally did it, and it was a great season. So very happy for him. And the Twins, this is why they signed him to that deal. This was a lot of surplus value for the Twins if you're a big surplus value fan.
Age 32 season on tap in 2026. Yes, if you're walking around wearing a surplus value t-shirt.
Can we put that on a hat?
If it just says surplus value, then sure. I guess maybe.
No, I'm kidding, dude. I'm kidding.
I don't know who would wear it. I really.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
A lot of merch ideas. Some of them are bad. We'll put that in the bad bucket. We got some other weekend observations. If you happen to have Bubba Chandler in your lineup and you were excited about it, it did not go well Sunday. It was 9 runs, all earned over 2 2/3 against the Brewers. I think I'm at the point where I will just say pitching in the big leagues is very hard. That is my takeaway from the Bubba Chandler struggles in that particular outing. And Jacob Mizorowski on the other side had what I would maybe say is his most complete sort of start. Not complete in the sense that he threw a complete game, but 108 pitches, 7 innings, 8 Ks, only 2 walks, scattered 3 hits, and allowed 1 earned run. And it's been up and down even for Mizorowski with just crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we kind of know what the deal is here, but I think with Mizorowski is just, some days he can't put that fastball over, It's
command. That's been part of the scouting report all along.
Yeah, but he's been really fun to watch, I think. Sometimes the high command, the high stuff, low command guys aren't fun to watch, but his stuff is so good that it's more like Ohtani, watching Ohtani pitch. It's not good command, but it doesn't really get to the point where it's frustrating to watch. There are guys who are frustrating to watch because of their command. I don't think it's that level. And plus the stuff is so good, you're just like, oof, wow. With Bubba, I did want to point out this. Andrew Vaughn, 4 for 5. He's a righty. Blake Perkins is a lefty.
Blake Perkins switch hits.
Bryce Turang, though.
He would have been on the left side. Turang would have been on the lefty. Blake would have been hitting him a lefty.
Okay. Bowers is a lefty.
Yep.
All right. So I was going to make a point about righties, but still, Vaughn going 4 for 5. I think Bubba Chandler's changeup is better than his breaking balls. Now, it's not quite borne out by the model. The model says that the slider is above average, the changeup, but it actually does say the changeup, even though it's a 101 stuff plus and the slider is 112, the changeup is further above average in the stuff plus model than the slider is. And I think just basically his changeup is ahead. He's a pronator that throws a really hard slider and he's not really great at spinning the ball. So I wouldn't be surprised if the big thing for Bubba is trying to figure out how to get righties out more than anything. I guess lefties, he's got a great changeup and 100-mile-an-hour fastball that's straight and works against lefties. It's the righties that I could see some struggles. I think he'll pull out of it, but why does he have an 18% strikeout rate? So far with this kind of stuff, I don't know exactly, but I do know that his strikeout rate is better against lefties. It's a 22% against lefties and 15% against righties. Now, obviously, this is a small sample, but when you're talking about pitchers, actually platoon splits become more meaningful quicker for pitchers because we're talking about pitches, certain pitches that they use, right? Certain pitches have platoon splits. So like if he is better than changeup, it would actually be meaningful that he's striking out more lefties than righties right now. So that's the thing he has to figure out is he going to command that gyro slider really well and get righties out? Or righties going to become a problem? And then we're going to start to see weird lineups where people are stacking righties against Bubba Chandler.
It'd be odd since Chandler is a righty, but yeah, that could happen if the same problem.
It's the John
lingers.
Danks theory. People played lefties against John Danks because he had a great changeup.
John Danks theory. Love that one when that one comes up. One other Brewers note to pass along. Jesus Mate already leaving Appleton. Hopefully you saw him in Appleton while you could because he's headed to Double-A after just 27 games at High A.
And hopefully you saw an Appleton in that special uniform they did that was like the it's like Lederhosen or something. Did you see that?
Oh yeah, they do that every year.
What is that? What are they wearing? Yeah.
Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah. What did you call it?
They play as the Utter Tuggers.
What is an Utter Tugger? Oh, an Utter Tugger. Yeah, an Utter Tugger. Yeah.
Wait, that's not the Lederhosen one though.
It's not? What does it look like?
Yeah. Well, that one's just got like a cow print on the jersey.
Oh,
you're talking about the Lederhosen one.
Yeah, there's one that looked more like work pants or something. It did not look like a baseball uniform. It was just looked silly on like an 18-year-old Jesus Mate. Dude, I don't know. But the fun thing is that, you know, when you graduate just by being the age he is and being at the level he is, you know, you have to circle him, you know. Like this is kind of star stuff. I mean, you can think about like Jackson Chourio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did something similar where he's a teenager at Double-A, you know? So really exciting young prospect that's on the way up. The things I did with my money and my time, going into this last few weeks is I've kind of become a little bit more schedule specific, and a little bit more cutthroat and a little bit more risk embracing versus risk averse, because I feel like so many times like your batting average is set. At this point, you're chasing homers and stolen bases. So like, for the most part, I know there's people who have, are tied in batting average and 1 point can matter. But like a lot of times you can get more out of, a couple homers than you can. It's also really hard to move your batting average a couple points, So I've been schedule hopping. So I got Luis Matos last week just because he was in Colorado. Now I dropped Luis Matos and I pick up Zack Gelof. And I'm putting Zack Gelof in there, even though he has a 47% strikeout rate, a 22% swing strike rate, worst contact numbers of his career. Seems to be trying to pull everything, even the bat speed is down, and it's just I wouldn't recommend Zack Gelof to you at all, except he has 6 games at home, and he could theoretically hit homers and steal bases. So, that's the kind of decision I'm making right now in my leagues. I also, I picked up like Tyler Wells because he has a start against Pittsburgh. It's like, it's all about what can you do for me right now? Other than, one guy that I picked up that I've seen some talk in the Discord about this guy, Daylen Lile, who we talked about a couple weeks ago, I think, and we were vaguely supportive and said it looked like he was playing every day. I wonder if he's, changing the needle for you at all in terms of like, would you be interested in him next year? Or is this just a guy who's playing for a team that just needs an outfielder and he's not that great, and he has a risk of, not being a starter next year? I say this because some of his projections are for a sub 700 OPS. And it is in that sort of 650 range that if you're not bringing a lot of defensive value, you can be cut pretty quickly by your major league team. Like if he's a 650 OPS corner outfielder with bad defense next year, he's not going to play. So, what have you seen from Daylen Lile over the last couple of weeks, and has it changed your opinion on him, or where do you sit on him?
His speed's legit, and I'm surprised the projections aren't a little better, given the age to level he's been young everywhere he's played. He's played pretty well at most of his stops.
He's 22 now, yeah.
22 now, and what he did before debuting was split between AA and AAA this year. He had a 174 ISO, and it wasn't like AAA PCL was boosting that up. He keeps the K rate low enough for that hard hit rate to actually be really impressive. It makes me think there's more in-game power that he could unlock over time. The Fangraphs future 40, current 40 raw, future 50, game 40-45. You're right about the left field thing. It puts a lot of pressure on his bat if he's not going to be a center fielder. I assume with Dylan Cruz there, they want Cruz to play center field, but
so far the defensive numbers haven't been good.
Yeah. Would they possibly
30/40 future glove on him from Fangraphs?
Right. That doesn't point to a guy that is supposed to go out in center field and play well there.
Yeah.
So you take all that and you say, okay, well, maybe he's more of a corner guy. Like, is Daylen Lile kind of like a Wenceel Perez in Washington? Like, is the defense in a corner good enough where it actually keeps the playing time up? That might be.
I think that's a good comp, and I think that's where you should draft him next year. Is like 6th outfielder, 5th outfielder. util.
Yeah,
right?
And with Perez, I think it's a little more power. I trust the power, in-game power more. But with Lyle, I know you're going to get some speed right away, and I also think the Nats are still in 2026 going to need to find ways to manufacture runs. So that means lots of green lights. Lyle's showing he can get on base enough to use those wheels. Like I think this could be all right. Defensively, and I'm flat out going to admit, I avoid watching the Nats. Like, they are not a team I'm seeking out. Like, I don't want to watch this team right now. Like, honestly, like, I'm just saying, like, my viewing hierarchy, like, they're in the bottom tier of like a team that I'm going to tune in for.
I don't think I've seen that many Lyle at bats actually.
Yeah. Oh, the killer here. This is what's going to put a crunch on his playing time. He's a -11 defensive run saved right now.
Yeah,
in a corner
and
-6 OAA.
Outs above average. Yeah,
this is not good, man. Like,
that's not good.
All the Nats fans that have watched this team are like, dude, yeah, if you just watch, you'd see it right away. Like, that's not. Is that like Dominic Canzone, metrically speaking, defensively? Like, that's not good.
And why? Tell us why in the Discord, because the legs are there, so it's just bad roots. Like, he just doesn't see it well. It's very strange.
Sense.
And then the top end bat speed's not really there, so. Canzone is actually an interesting comp here. That is an interesting one. And that is fraught with some of the risk I'm talking about. Is like, there's a chance that he's sort of up and down all year next year.
Yeah, and I said Wenceel Perez before I saw how bad the defensive metrics are. I think Perez's defense is actually good, especially in the corner.
Yeah.
That keeps the playing time afloat for him. So
Canzone might be the better comp.
Unfortunately, that's what it looks like, and maybe he's faster than Canzone, but it's another Nats player that's like shockingly bad defensively, though.
Yeah, they bad at developing defense? I've never heard of that. I've never thought of that as like a possibility, but thank you, Nationals, for creating that possibility in my head that a player development system could just be really bad. I mean, I've known that it is one of those things that every player development system thinks about and tries to coach their guys up. Mm-hmm. But I've never been like, oh, they're just terrible at coaching defense. I've never, I don't know why. I've never thought that. I just always thought that the Nationals had just collected a bunch of players that maybe had some defensive questions. That's how they got them. Right. And they're going through the sorting process. That's what I would always think, is just a sorting process of getting the players to the right places. Maybe Abrams has to be a second baseman, blah, 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 but maybe they're also not good at developing defense, however they do it.
And you've already got Lile in a corner, so there's not really anywhere else for him to go. And I don't think the bat is intriguing enough for him to say, well, it's left field DH. I don't think that's happening either. But why he's a bad defender, that I wish I had a better grasp on that. Perez is playing a little more in center field lately, too. Definitely a better option in the corner, but if they are happy with what he's doing in center as an occasional option there, that makes the pieces fit better. Less of that, of course, with Meadows back on the roster, but for a while before Meadows returned from his latest IL stint, that's what they were doing occasionally in Detroit. So a lot of moving parts there. The Gelof thing I thought was interesting only because we were just talking about Bubba Chandler having a rough day on Sunday, and that blows up your ratios, and I've been a Joey Wentz supporter. That backfired. He got moved up because Spencer Strider got moved back, and it was, I'm not supposed to be here today, and an epic meltdown of your ratios if you had Joey Wentz going. I was a little worried when I talked to our friend Patrick Davitt, Baseball HQ Radio, a couple weeks ago. He asked me for a Bane, a player I was worried about down the stretch, and I said Joey Wentz specifically, and it's like most people listening are probably like, I wasn't relying on Joey Wentz, dude. Only you were. But my reasoning was like for a broader group of players, basically anybody that had changed roles, kind of gone back and forth from bullpen to starting. I was like, it's been really good for Wentz as a starter. I'm just worried that this end of season stretch, these last 4 or 5 starts, he might just run out of gas because he was working more as a reliever the last couple of seasons. And it seems like maybe he has, in fact, hit that wall. I don't like to be right about that stuff, but that was just one of those things where I was like, I'm enjoying this. Maybe there's something there for next year. I'm not just setting it and forgetting it in September and assuming I'm going to keep getting these nice results.
Underrated little part of this, what Wentz was doing that was so nice was when he came back out of the bullpen, he kind of kept that, like, I'm just going to throw as hard as I can until they take me out of the game mentality. And he was 94, 93. For the first 5-6 starts, and then it started to really slough off. And this last start against Seattle was 92.4, and the start against Miami was 92.4. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but you are moving from close to average to, definitely sub average territory there.
Right. And with the full off season, if they want to bring him back as a starter next year and he builds up some more arm strength and kind of preps to be a starter, I think maybe the results are better, but he's still going to be a late flyer for very deep leagues, not a clear like sleeper for all formats or anything like that. But yeah, that was not a welcome move up. Mm-hmm.
Would you rather you're drafting next year, or you're going to draft Parker Meadows or Daylen Lile?
Meadows, because we know he can be at least an average, maybe an above average defensive center fielder. And both lefties, both have platoon risk. So you need the guy that you think is going to play, even though the Lile, who knows what
both have iffy sort of ball and play numbers.
Yeah, I mean, Lile a better bat to ball, but Meadows more likely to do some damage. The 2020 ceiling for Parker Meadows, I don't think was like an absurd belief, and he's been so hurt this year. I'm willing to give him a pass. So I'm Meadows over Lile for next year. What about you?
Yeah. I'm so lucky in our 20-team keeper league to have both, just through the roof.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. Got a couple mailbag questions we'll get to before we go. You answered some of this already. It's Jim in the Discord, but to know how we manage lineups in crunch time scenarios. You say you just become a lot more risk tolerant, right? You're just saying, hey, at this point, take some chances. There's only so much time left in the season, and the difference between finishing 3rd or 4th and 5th or 6th doesn't matter much in most situations. Maybe 3rd, you get some money back or something, but you would rather take the chance of getting up into 1st or 2nd and be more aggressive with the Gelof types. But the Gelof thing, I think I lost my train of thought partway through.
Yeah, you were talking about Bubba. Yeah, Bubba blows up.
Bubba blows up. Wentz blows up. And we're like, oh, our ratios. Oh, I lost 3 points in the standings. And you see it. But a week long, like, lose a little every day because Zack Gelof comes up and strikes out 14 times in a week. He started all 6 games and he got 2 hits. That does the same thing to you. It's a slower trickle. This doesn't all happen in one day.
It's an everyday thing. It's like the pitchers give you a lot of information every 5th day. Batters give you a little bit of information every day.
Yeah, there is a downside to that. It just leaks off. The points just leak away a little more slowly if it doesn't go well for a hitter streaming attempt like the Gelof.
I also just feel like, in head to head specifically, I'm like, I'm just like, I don't know, I'd rather, hew closer to the stuff that the way I've been making decisions all year, just because that's what's gotten me here. But, like I was giving you an example. In my 12-team dynasty right now, I have Ian Happ, Jesus Sanchez, Andy Pajes, Josh Lowe, Elliot Ramos, and Michael Harris. And I have to sit like two of them every day. And they just all seem so comparable. They're all pretty good. And like it's really easy when one's facing a lefty and you're like, all right, Jesus Sanchez against the lefty, you're out. Those things. Michael Harris against the lefty, you're out. But when like tomorrow I don't have that. Right now I'm sitting Elliot Ramos because he's home, and I'm sitting Michael Harris because he's facing Cade Horton, but that may not be the right decision. And I would just say have some grace for yourself and don't kick yourself too hard, because it's head to head and it's a 1 week sample and you're never going to get it all right.
Was there a point recently when Michael Harris was among the best hitters in the second half? That happened, right? For a little while.
Yeah, I think it was you had
cool
to play
back off
around
again,
with
right?
Endpoints. You had to do some endpoint stuff. Where you're like, in the last 30 days, he's been top 10 hitter.
He just had a week like the one I described for Gelof. Maybe not as bad in terms of strikeouts, but he doesn't have a hit since September 1st. Yeah, he had 2 hits first game of the week and none in the last 5.
I think for me, I've just settled, and I know this is way too specific. It's not answering it's Jim's question very well, but for me, he's settled in as like a guy I want to play if the matchup is good. Like I only want to play him if the matchup is good. I don't want to play him if it's mediocre or whatever, So that's why he's ending up on the bench. And some of that is feel. Because, he's asking about like rolling WOBA and rolling X-WOBA and stuff like that. And I just haven't, X-WOBA for hitters is slightly predictive. X-WOBA for pitchers is not. It hasn't been found. But if you put Ks in with the X-WOBA for pitchers, you actually start to make something that functions about as well as Sierra in terms of predictive quality. So you could use some sort of rolling Sierra and rolling X-WOBA for hitters. There's going to be some signal in there, but a lot of noise. And will that trump the matchup? I think the matchup is what's key.
Yeah, the day-to-day decisions are, I think, a little easier than the weekly ones. Well, it's not entirely true, but the factors you can consider in a daily league give you more confidence than the whole week. You don't know what the weather's going to be like all week on a precise sort of level, so you can't account for that, right?
And the schedule's changed too. You're trying to you're looking at a 6-game schedule and somebody's hamstring is barking or whatever, and all of a sudden Joey Wentz is pitching instead of Spencer Strider.
Yeah,
that's a lefty instead of a righty. That would change a lot of things. Yeah.
So I think just generally more aggressive in crunch time scenarios, unless it's a head-to-head weekly thing, and then you get to Sunday, it's the last day of the week, and maybe you're protecting. Of course, you're going to react differently in those situations. And I know it was brought up in the Discord. We don't talk a lot about head-to-head leagues because I don't think we play. I don't play in any. Do you play in any head-to-head leagues right now?
2.
You play in 2?
2.
Yeah.
So yeah, I sat Fromber yesterday in this one because I looked at it and was like, oh, there's nothing he can do for me that's good. He can only do bad things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you got to account for that throughout the whole season too. That's not a crunch time specific thing. That's just the nature of head-to-head leagues.
Well, it's a playoffs thing because you get seeding. So I could be like, oh, I'd rather win a couple. I'd rather go for it and win. Move up in the seeding. Go for that and not worry as much about this week's matchup. But in the playoffs, you have to win this week's matchup. It doesn't matter about seeding anymore.
Oh yeah, okay. You're thinking about creating the next matchup. I just meant in terms of this could only hurt me in this instance, like that.
Yeah. That becomes fairly obvious if you're just watching your stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think what he's talking about is the thing with my 5 hitters in 3 spots. It's you're going to have, what do you value more? Is it versus lefty in the park, how they've been hot or not? And I would start with the big stuff, which is versus lefty versus righty.
Yeah, platoon advantage. Make sure you get
the
that.
Platoon advantage. Then look at park. And then if you still have guys that are equivalent, then I say you could almost just go by feel. Yes, you could do rolling X-WOBA, but will that capture? I mean, if you really wanted to get really into it, you could start looking at heat maps. You could be like, okay, they're facing this guy who lives high in the zone, and he doesn't like the ball high in the zone. This is not a good matchup for him. You know what I mean? You could do stuff like that.
I would also say consider the strength of a bullpen more than you probably do when thinking about your matchups for hitters. If we think a lot about the starting pitchers, we know they're going to pitch maybe half the game or a little more if they're good, but we don't always think as much about the bullpen behind them and the impact those guys are going to have on your hitters in those closer matchups, especially.
Because especially when you're like looking at the Yahoo framework or a lot of the frameworks that just show you the starter, right? So you might like, especially if you think about like facing the Padres, right? You might just be like, oh yeah, Yu Darvish, like I think he can handle this. Is a good matchup for him, right? It's like, well, it might be Yu Darvish for 4 and then that awesome bullpen for the next 5,
Yeah. I mean, like, just look at the bullpen. You can probably look at a snapshot maybe of the half season at least, just to make sure you're accounting for the trade deadline, injuries, maybe taking some guys away. Just the general, like, this bullpen's really good, this is really bad, as far as that being another factor. I think that's definitely worth. I use it for DFS. I use it for 6 picks. It's on my mind as part of the analysis there. There's no reason why it shouldn't be part of a season-long decision-making process as well. One more question here. This is from Dosed90 in our Discord. Juan Soto for NL MVP, how strong is the case? I know this is something that Joe Sheehan wrote about in his newsletter sometime maybe last week or so. And Juan Soto's defense in the outfield gets penalized at the level of Ohtani being a DH. So that sort of just levels that off. So then you're just left to maybe evaluate them both as hitters and then tack on whatever extra value you want to give Ohtani's pitching exploits for this season so far. It's not 0. But even if that hadn't happened, I do think when you look at him head to head, like Soto's got him an OBP with a 401 to a 389, but Ohtani's got 10 more homers at 48-38.
He's got almost 100 points of slugging over him.
Yeah, almost 100 points of slugging. The home park for Soto maybe weighs into that a little bit. It's 11 points difference in WRC plus favoring Ohtani. I still think as good as this season has been from Soto, and it's like he's a steal away from 30 bags, which I did not see coming at all.
Yeah, there's some talk of 40-40.
It's a great season, but I don't think he's gonna get the votes to win it, and I'm not really sure that I would vote for Soto if I had an MVP vote over Ohtani.
But, I will say something, it's not the WAR award. It's not the wins above replacement award. And the reason I say this is we have more confidence in the batting numbers than we do in the defensive numbers. So would I put Soto second ahead of Corbin Carroll and Trea Turner and Geraldo Perdomo, who have better wins above replacements according to Fangraphs? I might. Because, when you look at WRC plus, you just look at batting production, Soto is second in the NL, and I would weight that heavier than defensive production, especially because there's some evidence that maybe our penalty for DHs is too high. Mm-hmm. And, if, for example, the penalty should be even 5 runs different, that'd be a half a win. If you give Juan Soto a half a win, he's ahead of Perdomo. He's right there with Carroll. And he's just behind Trea Turner. So I'm not sure what my ballot looks like. I'm not voting for this one. But I think right now, if I was, just sort of doing it off the cuff, I would still have Ohtani first, and then it would be Turner and Soto neck and neck. Maybe that changes over the next 3 weeks if Turner's sitting and Soto's playing.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. We didn't really talk about the NL WAR leaderboard. Trea Turner being number 1 in Fangraphs WAR among position players is a big surprise to me, at least. I thought he'd be up there, but I think he'd be number 1 on that list. I would probably have Ohtani, Soto, Turner, Schwarber in the NL in some order. That's probably the order I'd have them right now, but close enough where there could still be some shuffling there. But I think
Schwarber's a good point too. It's like, that guy is the 3rd best bat in the National League, behind Ohtani and Soto. How much are you going to penalize him for being a DH in this discussion?
I think all of it leads back to the beginning, where I look at it and say, I think we should be talking more about Trea Turner as an NL MVP candidate, really. It's always, the rundown's always a circle. Well, not always, but often. We're going to go on our way out the door. Reminder, you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. You can find Eno on Blue Sky, enosaris.bsky.social. I am DVR.bsky.social. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, putting this episode together. We're back with you on Tuesday.
Thanks for listening.